Chapter 6. Sampling. Introduction. A sample is a group in a research study on which information is obtained. A population is the group of interest to the researcher, the group to whom the researcher would like to generalize the results of the study. In almost all research investigations, the sample is smaller than the population since researchers rarely have access to all the members of a population. This chapter presents the idea of sampling from a population. It also discusses both random and non-random sampling and describes several different types of sampling designs. Finally, the chapter discusses when it is appropriate to generalize the results of a study. What is a sample? One of the most important steps in the research process is the selection of the sample of individuals who will participate, be observed or questioned. Sampling refers to the process of selecting these individuals. A. Samples and populations. A sample in a research study is the group on which information is obtained. The larger group to which one hopes to apply the results is called the population. The term population, as used in research, refers to all the members of a particular group. It is the group of interest to the researcher, the group to whom the researcher would like to generalize the results of a study. A target population is the actual population to whom the researcher would like to generalize. The accessible population is the population to whom the researcher is entitled to generalize. A representative sample is a sample that is similar to the population on all characteristics. B. Defining the population. The first task in selecting a sample is to define the population of interest. Population of interest could be defined by asking oneself the following questions. In what group, exactly, is the researcher interested? To whom does he or she want the results of the study to apply? The population, in other words, is the group of interest to the researcher, the group to whom the researcher would like to generalize the results of the study. C. Target versus accessible populations. A target population is the actual population to whom the researcher would like to generalize. The accessible population is the population to whom the researcher is entitled to generalize. A representative sample is a sample that is similar to the population on all characteristics. D. Random versus non-random sampling. Sampling may be either random or non-random. Random sampling methods include simple random sampling, stratified random sampling, cluster random sampling, and two-stage random sampling. Non-random sampling methods include systematic sampling, convenience sampling, and purposive sampling. 2. Random sampling methods. A. Simple random sampling. A simple random sample is a sample selected from a population in such a manner that all members of the population have an equal chance of being selected. B. Stratified random sampling. A stratified random sample is a sample selected so that certain characteristics are represented in the sample in the same proportion as they occur in the population. C. Cluster random sampling. A cluster random sample is one obtained by using groups as the sampling unit rather than individuals. D. Two-stage random sampling. A two-stage random sample selects groups randomly and then chooses individuals randomly from these groups. 3. Non-random sampling methods. A. Systematic sampling. A systematic sample is obtained by selecting every nth name in a population. B. Convenience sampling. A convenience sample is any group of individuals that is conveniently available to be studied. C. Purposive sampling. A purposive sample consists of individuals who have special qualifications of some sort or are deemed representative on the basis of prior evidence. 4. A review of sampling methods. The hypothesis students with low self-esteem demonstrate lower achievement in school subjects can be illustrated as follows. Target population, all 8th graders in California. Accessible population, all 8th graders in the San Francisco Bay Area, 7 counties. Feasible sample size, n equals 200-250. Simple random sampling, identify all 8th graders in all public and private schools in the 7 counties, estimated number of 8th grade students equals 9,000. Assign each student a number, and then use a table of random numbers to select a sample of 200. The difficulty here is that it is time-consuming to identify every 8th grader in the Bay Area and to contact, probably, about 200 different schools in order to administer instruments to 1 or 2 students in those schools. Cluster random sampling, identify all public and private schools having an 8th grade in the 7 counties. Assign each of the schools a number, and then randomly select 4 schools and include all 8th grade classes in each school. We would estimate 2 classes per school times 30 students per class times 4 schools equals a total of 240 students. Cluster random sampling is much more feasible than simple random sampling to implement, but it is limited because of the use of only 4 schools, even though they are to be selected randomly. For example, the selection of only 4 schools may exclude the selection of private school students. Stratified random sampling, obtain data on the number of 8th grade students in public versus private schools and determine the proportion of each type, e.g., 80% public, 20% private. Determine the number from each type to be sampled, public equals 80% of 200 equals 160, private equals 20% of 200 equals 40. Randomly select samples of 160 and 40 students from respective subpopulations of public and private students. Stratification may be used to ensure that the sample is representative on other variables as well. The difficulty with this method is that stratification requires that the researcher know the proportions in each stratum of the population, and it also becomes increasingly difficult as more variables are added. Imagine trying to stratify not only on the public-private variable but also, for example, on student ethnicity, gender, and socioeconomic status, and on teacher gender and experience. Two-stage random sampling, randomly select 25 schools from the accessible population of schools, and then randomly select 8 8th grade students from each school, n equals 8 times 25 equals 200. This method is much more feasible than simple random sampling and more representative than cluster sampling. It may well be the best choice in this example, but it still requires permission from 25 schools and the resources to collect data from each. Convenience sampling, select all 8th graders in 4 schools to which the researcher has access. Again, we estimate 2 classes of 30 students per school, so n equals 30 times 4 times 2 equals 240. This method precludes generalizing beyond these 4 schools, unless a strong argument with supporting data can be made for their similarity to the entire group of accessible schools. Purposive sampling, select 8 classes from throughout the 7 counties on the basis of demographic data showing that they are representative of all 8th graders. Particular attention must be paid to self-esteem and achievement scores. The problem is that such data are unlikely to be available and, in any case, cannot eliminate possible differences between the sample and the population on other variables such as teacher attitude and available resources. Systematic sampling, select every 45th student from an alphabetical list for each school. 200 students in sample out of 9,000 students in population equals 1/45. This method is almost as inconvenient as simple random sampling and is likely to result in a biased sample, since the 45th name in each school is apt to be in the last third of the alphabet, remember there are an estimated 68th graders in each school, introducing probable ethnic or cultural bias. V. Sample size. Samples should be as large as a researcher can obtain with a reasonable expenditure of time and energy. A recommended minimum number of subjects is 100 for a descriptive study, 50 for a correlational study, and 30 in each group for experimental and causal comparative studies. 6. External validity, generalizing from a sample. The term external validity, as used in research, refers to the extent that the results of a study can be generalized from a sample to a population. A. Population generalizability. The term population generalizability refers to the extent to which the results of a study can be generalized to the intended population. B. When random sampling is not feasible. Sometimes it is not feasible or even possible to obtain a random sample. When this is the case, researchers should describe the sample as thoroughly as possible, detailing, e.g., age, gender, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status, so that interested others can judge for themselves the degree to which any findings apply, and to whom and where. There is another possibility when a random sample is impossible to obtain, it is called replication. The researcher, or other researchers, repeats the study using different groups of subjects in different situations. If a study is repeated several times, using different groups of subjects and under different conditions of geography, socioeconomic level, ability, and so on, and if the results obtained are essentially the same in each case, a researcher may have additional confidence about generalizing the findings. C. Ecological generalizability. The term ecological generalizability refers to the extent to which the results of a study can be generalized to conditions or settings other than those that prevailed in a particular study.